Hello all heroes and welcome back to Invincible Guarding the Globe, and today we are going to be going over Conquest, the newest character to the game. We're going to be talking about some of the best ways to build him, talking about what skills you might want to prioritize, what artifacts you should put on him, and what teams he should be on. If you do like this video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It would help a lot. We have been having some immense growth lately and I would love to keep it up. Now, Conquest, our newest character. He is, of course, a From Worlds Beyond character, and his tags are fairly simple: Viltrumites, Invaders, Melee, and Flying. Nothing too crazy there. The Viltrumite tag is always appreciated, and he is a melee character, obviously. Now, being a defender, he is more of a bruiser type, not unlike Monster Girl. He strikes me, actually, as a Viltrumite version of Monster Girl, pretty much, where he's more so meant to be tanky and deal damage, and you'll see why here in a second. First of all, his main ability, I am Conquest. Conquest smashes the enemy to the ground, dealing a percentage of his base attack damage over an area of effect. He also silences his main target for 5 seconds, and then once you get to around level 6, he also gains a shield equal to a percentage of his attack stat that remains active for several seconds. If we go all the way to level 10, it's 400% damage. He silences the target for 5 seconds and gains a shield equal to 20% of his attack stat for 10 seconds. So basically what this is, he effectively picks an enemy to be the center of his attack, for lack of a better word. Slams that fool down and creates an area of effective damage around that enemy effectively that will deal the same amount of damage to anybody around said enemy that he targeted. After he does damage to all the opponents caught in that radius, he will then silence the main target. So it's the one he specifically slammed down to the ground. He'll silence them, meaning they won't be able to use their abilities for 5 seconds. So that's kind of the base. Then he does get the shield, and it is interesting because it's a shield, but it scales off of his attack stat, which is quite impressive for reasons that we'll talk about here in a second. If you do get it all the way to 10, that shield can last for as long as half of his cooldown, meaning that he can spend half the fight shielded effectively, which is no small feat. However, if you're being efficient with resources, level 6 is not a bad breakpoint, because level 10 does not have a massive attack difference. It's only like a 75% difference. The silence duration doesn't even change, but he unlocks the shield. Now, it wouldn't be quite as chunky of a shield, and it wouldn't last for as long, but again, if we're talking budget purposes, this is a pretty good breakpoint. Next, we have Chain of Command. When there's a leader ally present in the team, Conquest increases his attack by a percentage of his defense. Now, this is just begging for a character to be released in the future that will no doubt synergize with him very well here, but that's neither here nor there. Right now we have to worry about the characters that are actually in the game. Thankfully, if he's trying to buddy-buddy with leaders, he's in very good company, because if we do take a little peek at the tags here, and check out the leaders, we've got some goodies. We've got Universa, arguably the best character in the game. We have Doc Seismic, the other arguably best character in the game. And then we have Robot, a fantastic support. We have Titan, who is a decent tank. The Immortal, who's a good tank. And then Cecil, who is situational, but at least usable. So he is in very good company. He can slot in with any of these characters and he will get a very chunky attack buff. It's also very interesting because being a defender, his defense is going to be naturally higher than most characters. If he's with a leader and you have this skill cranked up, you can basically take that defense that is high for a defender and try to bring him up to attacker stat levels, which is no small feat. If you are using Conquest in any kind of serious capacity, there's really no breakpoint per se. You just really want to get this as powered up as humanly possible, because by getting him leveled up, that's going to increase his defense. Then you get this leveled up and transfer even more of that defense to his attack stat, and he will become a bulky and high damage nightmare. Especially, like I said, the allies that have the leader tag are the tasty ones. So even if you don't want to get this too leveled up, you can still have it at a low level, and then you'll still be throwing him in with some of the best characters in the game for a modest stat boost. Certainly not the worst thing in the world. Now, his next ability that you unlock at Exceptional Plus is a particularly interesting one. When Conquest's basic attack is a critical hit, he impales the enemy with his human arm, which is a weird thing to say. I think it meant more like humanoid arm, with his arm, applying a bleeding effect of a percentage of his base attack in total over 5 seconds, while reducing the enemy's healing by a percentage for several seconds. The hit has a percentage chance of breaking immunity barriers. Now, this is an interesting one, because this is the first character we've had that can reliably, at the very least, break through immunity barriers. Now, immunity barriers are like Invincible, the Immortal, Red Rush. They all have things that can make them temporarily immune to damage and debuffs. This can crack that as long as Conquest can get a crit. If we go all the way to level 10, the bleeding effect is 300% of his base attack, and reduces the enemy's healing by 40% for 5 seconds, and has a guaranteed 100% chance of breaking that immunity barrier. Now, where this can really work out well, I think, is Cecil's Nightmares events that have characters like Invincible or the Immortal who are being stubborn and trying to waste your time. Now, it is worth mentioning, this ability does not actually do damage in and of itself, even though it looks utterly brutal, and it's a lovely animation. I actually quite like it. For him to shove his hand through an enemy's pelvis, or I guess above the pelvis, the gut. I don't know why that's what I went for, but I mean that would be even worse. That sounds like it would just be even worse. Point is, he puts a hole through him, but it ironically does not do damage in and of itself. However, it does get this bleeding effect, which is arguably better. That said, the bleeding effect does not stack, so if he uses it in rapid succession, it'll basically just refresh the bleed as opposed to stack it. So that's just kind of something to keep in mind. Now, of course, you might say, okay, well, we want to get this as high as humanly possible in order to get the highest chance of breaking immunity barriers. Maybe not so, though, because, like I said, this is going to be most useful in Cecil's Nightmares. The thing with Cecil's Nightmares is you can rerun them. If you miss out on the percentage chance of him breaking an immunity barrier, you can just restart, run it again, roll the dice, and get it. So don't just upgrade this skill just for that percentage. Maybe upgrade it kind of like to what I've got, where it's like level 5, so it's like a modest chance, but not too low, not too high. Because sooner or later he will proc it, and then you can just proceed as thus. However, if you do want the higher damage and the reduced healing, which is kind of nice, especially in battles where you're fighting like a robot, then you can get this level up all the way, but just don't do it just for the breaking effect, because it's going to be most applicable in Cecil's Nightmares, and those you can rerun infinitely until you get it. So just something to keep in mind there. Retribution, his final Epic Plus ability. This is an interesting one, because as I found out in a previous video, it bypasses stun, which is no small feat. Conquest dashes towards the enemy that applied a debuff on him and headbutts them, dealing a percentage of his base attack damage, pushing them far away, and passing them the debuff. He also increases his crit chance. So, first of all, the crit chance, obviously, synergizes would go right through you. That one's a given. But the debuff passing is interesting, because what we seem to have discovered, and I don't know if this is intentional, so I say this with the disclaimer that it might be patched out. I don't know if this is intentional. But in a previous battle, in the last video where we went over his nightmare, he got a debuff from a Rexplode. So that triggered this ability to go after the Rexplode. However, at just a picosecond later, he actually got a stun from an ulting duplicate. That stun did not stop him. He still went and headbutt that Rexplode, passing on the burning debuff and the stun. So take that how you will. This says passing them the debuff kind of implies one, but it passed all of his debuffs. Was that intentional? I'm not going to say. Maybe it was. If it was, that's great. And to be fair, that was kind of a unique case anyway. I would not blame the dev team one bit if that got past testing, because admittedly that was a real thread in the needle move there. For him to get a stun effect literally at almost the same time, but then pass it on to the Rexplode. Take that for how you will. Maybe don't take that as gospel. Maybe that'll be patched out in the future. I don't know. But at the time, it was pretty sweet. Regardless, it allows him to cleanse himself and can even allow him to bypass stuns. It's also got a pretty quick cooldown. At level 5 here, it's 9 seconds. Take it all the way to 10, it goes down to 7 seconds. It also shows here that it cranks up his crit chance for 7 seconds, which means that barring the time it takes for you to get debuffed after the cooldown goes off, he can have effectively 40% extra crit chance at level 10 for 100% of the time after this triggers. So what's the breakpoint for this? If there's an ability you want to crank up, it's probably this one, honestly. The attack damage is modest but good. Pushing the enemy is very helpful because not only does it cleanse himself, but it's also basically a pseudo stun in and of himself because the enemy can't attack while they're being pushed away. And then that crit chance is nice. Not only does it crank up his own damage just by doing crits, but it also allows him to have a much higher chance of breaking barriers and applying more bleeds, which actually that damage does stack up over a while. I mean, that actually does do some good damage from those bleeds if he can keep them consistent. So if you have to choose one ability to really go whole hog on, Retribution is probably the one. But like I said, all of his abilities are good, but you don't necessarily need to power all of them up max. If you have to choose one, either Chain of Command or Retribution. Chain of Command is just so good because of the stats he gets from having leaders with him. And then Retribution is great because it can happen early, it can happen often, and it effectively cleanses him of debuffs and cranks up his crit. So, you know, I leave that up to you. But he's really good out the box, quite frankly. And you can get all of his skills up to like level 5, I think in this case level 6 to get that shield. And then you're good. So take that under advisement. You don't have to go whole hog on this guy. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I haven't decided yet. Now, as far as artifacts go, see, here's the thing. He's a defender, but he's a damage-dealing defender. So there's a couple ways you can go with that. You can go for either, I'm just going to power this up real quick so it's not bugging me. You can go for either the typical defender artifacts, which usually entails the Burger Mart Burger. This is the one where it heals everybody and increases their attack by a little bit. When his health goes by a certain bit, kind of turns him into a bit of a pseudo healer. Never a bad thing. You can go for a Burger Mart Burger. You can go for the new Oxygen Helmet. That's actually available currently in the Artifact Pass. This one is interesting because it's only useful in the first like few seconds of the fight, but it's going to be real useful in those seconds. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't tempted, but I'm not tempted enough. It also comes with lifesteal, which is very unique for an artifact. If I'm not mistaken, I think this is our very first artifact to actually come with natural lifesteal. So take that how you will. That does help him become quite bulky. The problem is those two artifacts are both kind of premium. If we're talking artifacts that maybe don't run you at quite a premium, the Guardians of the Globe bracelet is okay. It's not a massive buff, but it does come with an increase of defense percent and critical damage, which does synergize with him, and its stats are very nice, increasing both his defense as well as his physical and energy defenses to make him just that much bulkier. So just kind of something to keep in mind there. Everything else, I guess you could use this if you wanted to build up your ranged heroes, but that's not really necessary. So Burger Burger, Oxygen Helmet, and then probably if you're going budget, you can go for Guardians of the Globe bracelet. However, he does also function as an attacker. So there's a few things you can go with that as well. You can go for the GDA cloaking device. See, here's the thing. I'm mixed on this because, first of all, it gives attack and critical. That's really good. He needs crits. Conquest definitely wants crits. And it even increases crit damage. The problem is, the concept of making your tank go invisible does not really resonate with me. And quite frankly, if you have this cloaking device, you're probably using it on someone else. Like I have it on my Universa. You're probably using it on Universa, or Doc Seismic, or Invincible. So even though this does technically work for him, you probably have it on somebody else. Let's be real here. Now, the Flaxen Anti-Aging Bracelet. Okay, now you're cooking something. Again, this one's a little more premium, but it is technically available in the arena shop right now. Let me remind myself. It was a recent edition. Let's see, at what level do you unlock it? Take a peek here. Okay, so you don't get it there yet. Not there. Okay, so you get it at level 3, which is pretty early. Along with the Burger Mart Trash Bag, the Martian Spear, and Mark's Earpiece. This one can basically just allow him to do more of his ground pounds. More early, more often. And the cool thing is, with this particular cooldown effect, it means that if you do get his skill all the way up to level 10, he spends even less time with his shield down, because it'll be under 20 seconds. That 10-second shield will now be over half uptime, assuming it doesn't get cracked by something. So that is something worth mentioning, and it's got that crit chance, which synergizes with its third ability. It's got HP, which isn't bad, and energy defense, which also isn't bad. That very well might be his best in slot if you are using him as a bruiser. Now, if we do go later on here, you can also get the Obedience Collar. The Obedience Collar is pardon me. The Obedience Collar is good because it basically functions as a pseudo stun. But you can kind of put that on anybody, and it might be a little bit wasted on Conquest when you can literally put something more useful on Conquest and slap the Obedience Collar onto somebody else. However, if you did want to use it, it's a great artifact, and it has crit and defense, which is far from the worst thing. So yeah, probably if you're using him as a bruiser, you'd want Flaxen Anti-Aging Bracelet. You would want... Honestly, Oxygen Helmet can still be good in the beginning of the fight because his defense can transfer over to his attack. So Anti-Aging Bracelet, Obedience Collar. If we're going for more budgetary options, we do have, of course, Damien Darkblood's Notes, just straight up decreasing the defense of all human enemies. There are many human enemies in the game, so this is pretty wide effect. Or the Body Enhancement if you're using Guardians of the Globe characters. This works really well if you're running with, let's say, Robot or the Immortal. The Immortal is both a leader and a Guardian of the Globe, so kind of take that under advisement. That does work very well, and it even does have a modest defense buff, and like I said, the all-important crit. So probably this one is going to be the most free-to-play friendly option, and the Body Enhancement is just a really good artifact overall. So yeah, I think that about covers that. What teams do you want to use Conquest in? So, as we already mentioned, you want to use him in a leader, in a team that has a leader. Fortunately, there is no shortage of that. Universa, Robot, Seismic. He would be thrilled to be the defender for any of those DPS characters, even or robots and support. He'd be thrilled to be in any of their teams. Titan, not so much. The problem is, if you put him in there with Titan, then you've got two defenders. Then you're kind of starting to lose damage for no good reason. You really don't want to put him in there with Titan, even if it does technically work. Cecil, the problem with Cecil is that he's just so niche that it really doesn't work. Cecil doesn't really do anything for Conquest, And he doesn't really do a whole lot for the team in general, being honest. It's just if you're fighting Guardians of the Globe, then they don't do as much damage, which is fine and dandy, but meh, nothing crazy there. Like I said, though, Universa, Robot, and Seismic, those teams are well established. Let's say you have a Titan or an Immortal or an Allen being their tank. You can swap out those characters, slap in Conquest, boom, you're done. Now, the obvious question is Viltrumites. How does he fit in a Viltrumite team? And that question is surprisingly complicated, actually, for interesting reasons. Because here's the thing. Nowhere in his kit does he have Viltrumite synergies. He has leader synergies, and, when the day comes that we get a leader Viltrumite, that's going to be a big day. It's going to be a good day for Conquest, but as of right now, we have no leader Viltrumites. However, in spite of that, he still plays just fine with Viltrumites. Because he is a Viltrumite character, anybody with a Viltrumite tag is just blessed. Even Kid Omni-Man, with him being a rare character, he's a Viltrumite, so it's nice. Mostly because of Thula here. Whenever a Viltrumite dies, Thula gets a massive power boost. Now, to be fair, your Conquest might not die before Thula, but if he is doing his job being a tank, if he bites it before Thula does, then Thula will, of course, get a very powerful buff. And Nissa, on top of being just fantastic because she can just destroy the defense stat of any human characters, and as I mentioned, there are many, Conquest does synergize very well with her, because half of her kit relies on enemies being pushed, which Conquest can do often. His Retribution skill, with a very short cooldown, if he gets debuffed, he will push them. The moment he pushes them, and Nissa is going to get pissed and go after them and finish what Conquest started. They pair well together. Now, Lucan. It's the same problem as Titan, only worse, because Lucan is worse than Titan, but there's just no point in having two defenders on the team, even if it is two Viltrumites, and even his synergy skills are just so much worse than his counterpart in Thula. There's just no point. I mean, the only thing that Lucan does offer is a reliable taunt at the very beginning of the fight, but literally, Conquest is just better Lucan. So why would you use Lucan in a team where you have Conquest? That's just that. And then of course, Invincible, Omni-Man. They're more so just amazing characters. And if you do have Invincible with Omni-Man, it does trigger his Going Steady ability, which decreases the team's ability cooldown, including Conquest. So the best team, I kind of mentioned this in my arena team yesterday, but the best team, if you're running like a Viltrumite core team, would be these 5. But if you're doing that, you're missing out on the leader bonus. So yeah, take that one as you will. Right now, with the current restricted arena being Viltrumites, it's not really a factor because there are no leader Viltrumites anyway. But I think it's probably better right now to get Conquest in a team with a leader as opposed to focusing on like a Viltrumite core. Now you could do like Conquest, Thula, Anissa, and then throw in like Universa and Adam Eve or something. That could work. There's nothing wrong with that team. That would do just fine. But the point is, prioritize sticking him with a leader as opposed to Viltrumites. Now, like I said, Conquest has the potential to age like a fine wine, because once Season 4 rolls around, we may get a Viltrumite leader at that point, if rumors serve. So, Conquest has the potential to really increase in value. Right now, there is a gaping hole in his lonely heart that only a Viltrumite leader can fill. And more importantly, a gaping hole in his kit that only a Viltrumite leader can fill. That day will come, but for now, he is perfectly usable with Anissa or Robot or Doc Seismic, making him an absolutely brutal bruiser-style defender. And yeah, that is about all we've got for the day. Let me know down in the comments below if you've been using your Conquest, how you like them, and we shall see you next time. Have a good one.